Yeah, I don't know. It's I wish we wouldn't put ourselves in some of those positions. Like tonight, I think that's on us. But they were resilient. They didn't, they believed right into the end that we could come back and win that game. You could tell by the chatter in the locker room after one, after two, that they weren't going to give up on it. Coaches kind of felt the same way. If we tightened up our checking a little bit and closed the door on the defensive side of it, that we'd give ourselves an opportunity to come back. So good on them for like sticking. Would have been an easy game to like just kind of go away quietly and say it wasn't our night, but they didn't. They didn't allow that to happen. So it's really, it shows really good mental toughness, and it's what you need this time of year.
Did you have any thoughts of, even if it wasn't his fault, just switching things up with Georgie, perhaps to change some momentum? And if not, why did you stick with him in that situation?
Yeah, just because like our whole team sort of struggled in the first, right? And I don't know that we can blame them on any of those goals. They were getting saves at the other end. They didn't have to get many in the first. Like I felt like we passed up some scoring chances, but like my belief is that if our whole team's going to battle to sort of come back in it, that Gorgie's got to be part of that, And I don't have that mentality all the time, but tonight that was my thought process with it. So, yeah, I think it was going to need to be a group effort. Like from the goaltender out, we were going to have to get more committed and sharper, and so they did it. And I felt like Gorgie really settled in. I thought second period we were coming and we were creating some really good chances, hit some posts, walked into some really good scoring areas, and we just had a tough time putting it in the back of the net, and they got a little puck luck on theirs. They earned all their goals, no question. But theirs were going in and ours weren't, so eventually I felt like it could turn for us.
You mentioned the chatter of the guys in the locker room between periods. You were outshot 16-4 in the first period.
Yeah.
Do you just kind of watch that like that's
No.
an anomaly here? Or?
No, because it was too similar to the Columbus game, right? Like first period, we have it at like O-zone, D-zone time was equal, and yet they more than doubled us up on shot attempts, right? So they were hammering pucks and creating chaos, and we were looking for seam passes and plays that weren't there because they were covering them off, and we took ourselves out of some scoring areas. So that's why we ended up with the 4 shots. I felt like we could have had 10, and even though they were winning races and battles in the first, they were more competitive. Like they played a good hockey game tonight, and so we needed to make that adjustment first, get skating, get more competitive, and we had to simplify it offensively. Like we were looking for the perfect play too much in the first, and I felt like we did a nice job of that in the second, and then again in the third, staying hungry and just finding the rhythm of our offensive game.
Over the last year and a half, this would have been the type of game where you probably have to play Nate and Nico 30-something minutes just to make that comeback.
Yeah.
But you got to go up on a third pair defenseman and then a fourth line forward. Just how big are those pieces? These last couple of weeks, you've had the ability to do that your line.
You can't win against really good teams consistently if you don't have that depth. Like that, all the teams, like I'm looking at the teams that you got to beat out west, and they all have depth. They're deep teams. They play 4 lines, no different than we did when we won, Vegas did last year. Like that's what it takes to win. So, I mean, you can win on occasion with, your stars just rolling out there, but it's not sustainable over 82 games or 2 months of the playoffs. It's just grinding along, trying to carve out points as best you can, but it's not something that you want to be relying on. So, I mean, it's huge. Duhaime gets the big goal. That's a great shift by those guys. The Colton line was really good. They were probably the best line in the first when everyone else wasn't going. So we had like certain pieces carrying us. We flipped some things around with our lines again and caught a spark and caught some chemistry with Drouin and McKinnon and Rantanen, and rest is history.
McKinnon has more points this season than Joe Sakic before starting.
Yeah.
What is your reaction to that statement?
Well, it's. I mean, we know that this guy's a phenomenal player, right? But that's pretty good company when you're talking about our boss. It's, had such a phenomenal career, and then you watch what Nate's doing, and just speaks to who Nate is as a player and what he's capable of.
Coach, kind of unanswerable too, but just how many times between 2 years in Halifax and this year when you watch them, how many times do you think him and Drouin have practiced that one-timer? And now you get two of them.
Oh, a lot. I mean, look, just come to one of our practices. They're out early, they're out late. They're always working on those little touches and shots. And tonight, it's like, we had trouble. It's funny because we had trouble going through the seam too many times in the first period, and yet we get 2 seam goals in the third. So you got to be careful as a coach what you're telling them and what you're showing them. That's why I don't mind. I think you got to let players keep their creative side and play to their offensive instincts, right? Like that's part of our message. But when it isn't going well and you're not making the plays, you got to make an adjustment. You can't just stick with the fancy stuff, right? But then when you execute, it looks great. But if the play's there to an open guy and you're not always having to pass through someone, like you might have to get some air under the puck to get it over a stick. Like I don't mind some of those plays. Even late in the game, I thought we passed up on some shooting opportunities from the slot. Like Middlestead pulled one to his backhand, walking right in. Then he slipped one over to Drouin that we missed on. And but eventually, if you're carving out scoring chances on a shift by shift basis, eventually you may get rewarded. But you still got to force the goalie to make some saves.
Nate told us he thought in the back half of that game, Jonathan Drouin was maybe the best player on the ice. Just what do you think of his game?
Oh, yeah, no question. He was the best player on the ice. He was phenomenal tonight. I thought – so, like, we had Nate with Mikko and Val to start. They were beating it up a little bit. I thought Drouin and Lehkonen were going, so we made the flip. Then Mikko started to really kind of get competitive. I thought he had a really good start to the second period. So I was, trying to get the most out of all those guys. So we moved Mikko and Drew together. When they got with Nate, that was all we needed. They were phenomenal. So, but Drew really from start to finish in the game was a catalyst to our offense.
Phrasing had referred to the expectations from the leadership group as contagious. Is that kind of an example of the full team effort today?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question. And that wasn't an easy one. Like, again, I think Pitt played really well tonight. Like, they gave us more than we can handle through at least 30 minutes of that game. And I think it took an exceptional effort from our guys tonight to win that hockey game. Like, and it took our whole roster, our depth, like everybody involved in it. We did shorten the bench a little bit, but it's just because some of those guys play when we're protecting leads and killing penalties, and other guys we have to lean on at times to get the job done. But we had lots of guys going tonight, and I've said that about our leadership group all the time. And the best example I can think of is last year, coming out of the Stanley Cup, running thin up front for most of the year. But you look at the year that all those guys that came out of the Stanley Cup team and the years they all had career years, and here they are doing it again.
What do you think of noon starts?
I love them. I got a day and a half off now. No hockey.
Yeah.
Last one.
Nate always says, I'm not the player that Sackey was, but having been his coach for a while now, do you feel like by the end of his career, he might be looked at as a similar player in the franchise?
Oh, no question. Yeah, no question. Yeah, both elite and different players, different era. You got to respect what both those what he did as a player. I mean, it's hard to even put it into words. And then if you look at what Nate's doing, and if he just continues to do it, I mean, there's no question he's going to be, seen as one of those guys. No question. If he's not already.